Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. The radio and TV version of the show air in over 12 states. This includes both coasts and Silicon Valley. The show also airs in the UK, Caribbean, and Australia. For full show times, plus past episodes of the TV and radio show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. We just launched a free online community to connect past guests, listeners, and others. This community will allow you to network, chat on Slack, or get help with anything else, and a lot more. If you're interested in joining the community, buying some merch, sponsoring the show, or signing up for the newsletter, please go to buildingthefutureshow.com. I want to invite all of you in the Building the Future community to join me at SoupX, the Startup Expo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this July 26th, where I'll be the MC. SoupX is one of the largest and best startup conferences in the US and the official gathering of the Building the Future community this summer. SoupX has cutting-edge content, a cool startup competition, and a half-day forum this year called #WomenForWomen, the largest gathering in the US in 2018 of angel groups, seed funds, and VC funds focused on female founders and female entrepreneurs. For more information, visit www.sup-x.org. I hope to see all my Building the Future friends there.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Spencer Fry. He's the founder and CEO at Podia. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I've kind of followed your career a little bit since kind of the Carbonmade days. That's kind of where I think I kind of started following what you guys were doing. But maybe before we get into all the fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, which is best known as having Yale University there.
Sure.
There's not much else.
Okay.
But yeah, I was fortunate that, so I'm 34 years old now, so I was fortunate to live on campus from a young age. And that meant I had access to really, really high-speed internet.
Nice.
From like the age of 11, when everyone else was on AOL dial-up modems. So I was able to experiment a lot with like internet stuff, I guess 23 years ago.
Wow. Sure. No, that's great. I know I kind of got lucky too, where I grew up. We had high speed kind of internet since like kind of the mid 90s. We were like one of the first provinces in kind of North America to get really kind of true high speed internet outside of kind of the government or university campuses. So I totally get that. But so you went to Yale, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What did you take? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I didn't stray that far from home.
Okay, sure. No, I think most people have heard of Yale, and I totally get why you chose to go there. But what did you take there, and what made you take that?
Mm-hmm. So I actually started as a computer science major for the first 2 years of school.
Sure.
But I quickly switched to psychology for my junior and senior year because in my sophomore year, I started, I guess you could say like my first real successful internet startup.
Okay.
And the computer science degree at Yale is like super demanding.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to balance both.
Interesting.
So I chose getting a degree in like a slightly easier discipline than trying to do computer science as well as run TypeFrag, which was my first big startup.
Sure. So what exactly was TypeFrag or is TypeFrag?
Mm-hmm. So the crazy thing is it still exists today.
That's great.
I haven't been I haven't been a part of it for many, many, many years.
Okay.
But it was the first voice over IP company for computer game players to be able to play games together online. So basically what that meant was you and your friends or you and your teammates could talk to each other while playing video games instead of having to like type everything out.
Sure.
And we were the first.
Wow.
And it went super, super well. I think the numbers are that we launched it in March 2000. Try not to date myself. 2005. So my sophomore year, I think that was.
Sure.
And we went from $0 in revenue, so zero MRR in March to about 140,000 MRR in July.
Wow.
So in like 4 months.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I remember actually using that, playing online games with
Oh, really?
with my like friends at the time. Like, and for people that don't remember, like that almost changed the entire kind of online gaming space, right? And maybe you could even
Yeah.
argue it did, because
Oh, it did, definitely.
just not having to type on the keyboard was, like, it sounds kind of insane, but at the time it was huge, right? Like, and people
Yeah.
still obviously just chat on something now, and don't have to worry about it, but at the time it was like game changing.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too is that it let you form relationships with other players,
Sure.
outside of just the game. So what we actually saw that was super interesting, that people would just join these voice servers that we were hosting, while they weren't even playing. So they would just like hang out with their friends and just chat and then play games together. But it was more like this community atmosphere.
Sure.
And then the other big thing, my claim to fame, although I can't prove this, but I'm like 99% sure, that so TypeFrag was actually the first company ever, in my opinion,
Sure.
to advertise on podcasts.
Oh, interesting.
So this was 2005, and
wow, that would have been
there
super
weren't
early
even
on.
like, yeah, so there wasn't even this idea of iTunes podcasts or anything like that, but there was these people that were creating these basically like voice segments around games and stuff like that, and we were one of the first. Actually, I think we were the first to advertise on them.
Sure. That's wild. So just for out of curiosity, did you guys raise money for that, or how did you guys kind of build version 1 of that?
Yeah, so for my first 3 startups, never raised $1. Only in with Podia that we raised money.
Sure.
So we really it was just my co-founder and I building the product, designing the product, et cetera, and really just kind of growing the whole thing based off of revenue.
Sure. Oh, very cool. Okay, so walk me through kind of, from TypeFrag, like, how did Carbonmade come together and kind of be known in the space?
So basically after TypeFrag, so I worked on that for about 4 years.
Okay.
I connected with these 2 guys out of Chicago, and we started building CardMade together.
Okay.
And similarly to TypeFrag, it was actually the first in the space in terms of online portfolio platforms.
Sure.
So I've been fortunate to like be the first in a lot of these things. And with Podia were again like the first for digital storefronts.
Sure.
But so we immediately like owned the search terms on Google for online portfolio and free online portfolio. Like we were number 1 for both of those, and we just started to sort of explode in growth through Google search traffic, and then also the downturn in the economy in 2008 really led to our growth, because all these artists and designers and creative people were out of work, and they all needed portfolios to find work. And similarly with TypeFrag, we also had one of those like breakout moments where World of Warcraft came out.
Yeah.
And all these gamers were like, we need voice over IP. And so I've been fortunate to find or like timing with both startups.
Sure. Yeah, because I still have like one of my good best friends of all time still goes down to BlizzCon every year, and the people that he goes and meets up down there, he basically met them playing World of Warcraft on something, either TypeFrag or I think Ventrilo, right? One of those two at some point. So it's crazy to to kind of just relate that back, right? But so Carbonmade, I remember like a lot of people I think moved, at least in kind of I work as a designer, kind of my day job, but so I think at least for me, a lot of my kind of design friends were kind of moving their stuff to Carbonmade, or maybe it was the first time actually putting their portfolio online. I remember like people used to carry those big like black portfolio cases around. Exactly. Even web designers were doing it, right? Because people wanted to see like a printed version of a website, which I thought was kind of hilarious at the time. But or sometimes like they didn't maybe know how to build their own website for their portfolio, or they didn't have the time because they were just so busy. So Carbonmade, I remember that. And the one thing I think, and I think all of your startups that I can at least remember, the illustration work that you guys have had and still have on kind of Podia has always been really, really well done.
Thank you.
Who does that? Is that you? Is that somebody else?
No, so it's been different people every time, but I just really, really value kind of brand and playfulness and creativity. I just feel as if almost every startup out there or like just has such a bland look to it, and it's very generic. And I try to do something that's a little bit more eye-catching, and like it might put some people off because not everyone wants to see illustrations. But for other people, like they really kind of gravitate toward the brand, and they sort of find that they connect with the humanness of it. So illustration has just always been like a big part of any startup I've worked on.
Well, that's interesting. So I want to just step into Carbonmade for a second. How did it kind of come to be? You were quickly talking about it, but we kind of sidetracked. I want to get like the actual, like, how did it come? Why did you guys decide to actually start that up?
Sure, yeah. So the quick story is that I met these guys in Chicago. They had this design agency called Interface. Great guys, super talented. Dave was a designer and Jason was a developer. And I joined them as basically the 1/3 partner of their design agency. And we started to kind of work on projects together. And so Dave had actually built and designed Carbonmade, like the first version of it, like the initial kind of prototype, as his own online portfolio. And Jason had worked on sort of like the back end of it. And then we sort of put it out there and people started to really gravitate towards it. And then we started to put more and more of our time and resources and energy into like building it as a thing. And then we were able to eventually, I think we got to about 12K in monthly recurring revenue. And we were like, all right, we're not going to take on any more client work. We're just going to split this 3 ways, like 4K a month. And we're just going to go full time into Carbonmade. And then the rest is sort of history.
No, that's really cool, man. So you moved on from Carbonmade and you co-founded Uncover. What exactly was that, and how did you decide to kind of found that up?
So basically, I worked on Carbonmade for about 4 years. We grew the team to like 12 or 13 people. All bootstrapped, going really, really well. And then I wanted to sort of step into kind of something new, and I started working on Uncover, which was originally meant to be more of like a suite of business tools for online companies. Basically seeing a lot of the pain, like, I don't know if you remember, but you probably do, 2011, but all the business SaaS tools were just terribly designed, really hard to use. And I felt like there was a huge market for us to be able to kind of disrupt that, bring in like good design, good product, et cetera. So I started working on Uncover for about a few years. We had some success. Like it was definitely like the least successful of anything I've worked on, but it still did pretty well. But I just found that like 2 or 3 years into it, I just wasn't really into building B2B SaaS tools. And I just wanted to get back into working directly with individuals. Cause we were having to sell into like HR departments, and there was so much red tape and like so many meetings you would have to take. And it was just kind of a pain.
I know what you mean. I totally get that. So how did kind of Podia come to be, and what exactly is it?
So basically my entire life, I've been around sort of teachers and academics. Both my parents are actually professors at Yale. My dad actually just retired this past week.
Very cool.
But I've been around like the whole like education market. Actually, he's one of the first people to have an online course in that Yale has this program called Open Yale, and his course has been seen by like millions of people on YouTube and iTunes. And so cool. I've been around that I've been around that online course, digital learning space for a while, just in my own life. And then I have like a lot of friends who, are working on YouTube, have big lists, create content, write ebooks, audiobooks, etc. And found that they were having to sort of stitch together a bunch of different programs to make that work. So they'd have like their online course platform, they'd have their digital downloads platform, they'd have their email marketing platform, they'd have their membership platform. And I felt like to make everyone's life easier, like, let's put that all under one roof. Let's create a real digital storefront where you can sell all those things. You don't have to have customers in every different place. You don't have to take payment in all these different places. Let's consolidate that under one roof and really just build like a true digital storefront where you can sell courses, memberships, and downloads.
Okay, very cool. No, I think it's really great because you're right. Like it is kind of, you can do all three of those things, and switching between the two and getting, or two or three, it can be kind of a nightmare as kind of if you're trying to sell some of this stuff. So kind of bringing it together makes a lot of sense. But for people that maybe haven't heard of Podia, let's dive a little bit deeper into exactly kind of what you mean by those kind of three verticals.
Sure. So basically the hub is your own digital storefront. So basically you can, if you're familiar with like Shopify,
Sure.
Canadian company.
Yeah.
So Shopify sort of paved the way with creating a storefront online, but for physical goods. So
Sure.
we started there. So like you have your own storefront, it's on your own custom domain, or you can use our domain. And that's what houses all of your content. So whether that's an online course, so an online course is typically made up of videos or audio files or text and follows some sort of progression. So you're sort of here to learn a thing, whether that's like how to be a better marketer or how to learn to code or whatever. And then a digital download is something like an ebook or an audiobook or PDF or something that's smaller, something that you want to have your customers download to their computer and take with them.
Okay.
And then memberships is sort of a new concept that's been developed over the last like year or so, which is sort of works like Netflix in the sense that you have these members who are kind of your most trusted fans or something like that. And they have access to more of your content library. So maybe you pay $25 a month or maybe 50 or 100. We have some people paying like $1,000 a month to be a member.
Wow.
And that member is getting access to all of your content. So maybe all your courses, all your downloads, et cetera. And then they're also getting private updates from you, directly from you as the content creator.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's very cool. And I think just tying those three together, because I think to your point a second ago, you're right. Like selling kind of digital downloads, there's a lot of people doing it, but it's a bit clumsy to do it online. So kind of tying the three together, because sometimes like you're building a course, but then there's like digital files that they actually need, and maybe you want one and not the other, or both. And then I think it also makes sense because, at least in my experience, sometimes with the online course, you want to just like go through the like hours of course and then be done. But sometimes you have this like, okay, you've done the course, and then you're like, now what? You want to like keep kind of going, right? And you want kind of new content. And so actually having a membership kind of around there where you can kind of keep being engaged. Because I think at least my own struggle with some of this stuff is you learn something new and then you never actually get to put it into practice, or you're not kind of keep up on it. You just kind of forget about it. And, a year goes by and you're like, let's get back into that. And then you kind of almost have to like rewatch everything, right? But if you're kind of paying for something monthly, I think you're way more likely to use it, kind of stay engaged and kind of keep learning in that new space. Is that kind of a fair way to put it?
Yeah, for memberships, definitely. It's much more intimate. It's more, you with the creator. Whereas courses are amazing, and we have a lot of people selling a lot of courses, but they're more something that you should sort of do on your own.
Sure.
So memberships kind of ties that all together. But the big advantage really is that, we handle, for you as like the content creator, we handle all the payments for you. We handle all the, the server infrastructure. We handle all the account management stuff, everything. So really like all you really have to do is you have to add the content and then you have to market it. We even help you with all that as well. So for you as a creator, it just makes it so much easier for you. Like you only have to focus on content creation and marketing.
Okay. So, and then I basically put it in the platform and then you guys help me with everything else. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And it's all yours. So it's all in your own custom domain. So like the easiest thing I can say is it's basically like we're your web host for your website. But instead of your website, it's a digital storefront.
I got you. Okay. So for people that maybe are kind of thinking about either doing, one of these things or a couple of these things, how do you kind of maybe convince them, or what do you say to them to actually start creating some of this content? Because I think part of the problem, there's a lot of people that know something and have been thinking about this, but they're kind of just scared to maybe put their content actually out there and in kind of in front of people.
Yeah, I mean, so, sharing is always like a scary thing, because
Sure.
you're concerned about, how people are going to judge me or, whether it's going to be successful or not. But what really the first thing is just to produce something.
Okay.
You don't have to start with a full online course that's 20 videos or 3 hours long. Like, you can start with a single video, or you can start with a single piece of content, or you can start with a single PDF. The most important thing is to have something that is going to teach something to someone else. So, if you're a designer, maybe it's a PDF on these are my tips for, landing new clients, or these are my tips on how I think about a design process. And you can start there. You can start really simple, start to build up an audience, start to earn people's trust. And then really it's really just about engaging your audience. Even if you have, we have people that have small lists of 50 people or 100 people or even 10 people, but are still making money every month, just by kind of targeting those people and really engaging with them.
Sure. Because you guys also do you have a newsletter platform too. Is that correct?
Yep.
So
yeah. So the other big
go ahead.
complicated thing, the other big complicated thing for selling online is that not only do you need a platform for selling your courses and downloads and memberships, but you also need a platform to do all your email marketing. So we have a full suite of email marketing tools right inside Podia for sending newsletters as well as drip content. So you can really just handle everything in one place. And it makes it a lot easier for you to engage with your customers. Hey, so you can set up a drip email that after they download your PDF, that follows up with an email 3 days later and be like, hey, I'd love to learn your thoughts. And you can sort of do all these kind of automated marketing things to really engage with your customers.
Sure. So maybe, I think you give kind of a pretty good overview, but maybe do you want to kind of walk me through say I'm creating some content and or a course, so I come to the site, I get kind of a 30-day trial, which is more than enough time to kind of upload my content and start testing this out. And then I basically upload my list and or start creating my list. And then how does it kind of work on a month-to-month basis? As I'm adding new content, do I have to send out emails, the drip kind of campaign stuff? Do you maybe want to kind of walk us through, once
Sure.
my content is kind of in there, how does it kind of keep going itself, kind of automated, kind of month to month?
Mm-hmm. So there's 2 ways to do it. There's the continually add new content every month or every couple of months.
Okay.
Or there's the sort of longer term releases where you release something, say in January, and then you wait 6 months or a year to release something else.
Mm-hmm.
For different people, those kind of content cadences work better, depending on how much time you want to spend and dedicate to creating content. But basically, the simplest version is that you create an account with us, you're dropped into the dashboard, and from the dashboard, you can start to add your products. So you can either add a course, or you can add a download, or you can create a membership. So from there, let's go with courses. So say you want to create a course, you create a new course on Podia, you add the content, you set up your sales page, you put in the description, give it a price, you connect to your Stripe account, you connect to your PayPal account to get paid. Another kind of big advantage to us is that we don't take any fees and all the money goes directly to you.
Okay.
So you get to keep everything you earn.
Okay.
But after you've connected payment, after you've written your sales page, after you've put up your course content, you just publish it. And then from there, you have a link that you can send people either through email or social media, or post on, a business card or whatever.
Sure.
And then you can start to get customers. And so say I find your course and I want to buy it, say it's $99. So I buy the course, I'm dropped into my own dashboard that's directly with under your name.
Okay.
And from there I can engage with the course. I can open up the course, I can start to watch the videos, watch the content, but also I'm going to see all the other content that you're offering.
Okay.
So say you add a new ebook, or say you add a new course, that's going to show up on my dashboard. Or say you add a new membership plan, I can join that. So it's really interactive, and it's all kind of under your brand and under your store. And as you add more and more things, your customers can easily kind of buy additional content from you.
Okay, very cool. You touched on something that I want to dive a little bit deeper into, is kind of pricing, because you guys do it a little bit kind of different, and I actually prefer the way that you guys do it. So do you maybe want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into kind of the couple packages and how you guys do pricing?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things that I've always believed throughout the last 20 years I've been doing startups is that having simple and clear pricing is a big kind of competitive advantage in a way.
Sure.
So we just have two plans. They're super straightforward. One's called the Mover. Okay. It's $39 a month, and that includes courses, downloads, email marketing, and basically everything you need in those areas.
Yeah. And
the other one is Shaker, so that's $79 a month, and it includes everything in Mover as well as memberships. So memberships is basically exclusive to Shaker, but it lets you sort of start with Mover. So people that are just kind of starting with content, and maybe they want to start with courses, they want to start with downloads, and then when they've started to build an audience, then they can kind of graduate into Shaker and start to create membership.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? To kind of have, because I think some people are going to go right to memberships, but you're right. I think some people are going to start actually building their content before they kind of go to a bigger plan. That totally makes sense. And I agree. I love, when there's 37 choices of pricing, it just gets so confusing, right? Or even kind of 5 or 6, you're like, well, I don't know. So I totally get why you guys just did kind of 2. I think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, we also sort of think about it from more of a startup-y, or when you're thinking about building your own pricing plans, we think about it sort of as here's the person that's experienced and really knows what they want to do and has sold content online before, et cetera, as that higher end plan. And then the other plan is more kind of conveniently priced, lower price for people that are sort of just getting started and want a kind of a price point that's easier for them.
Sure. No, that makes
sense. So we really look at the persona of the person as well.
I got you. Okay. So you kind of mentioned this earlier, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into this. You said pretty much all your startups have kind of been bootstrapped. And you, if I remember correctly, for the first version of Podia, you did bootstrap it and then you raised money. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I put in the first $35,000 myself.
Okay.
And I took no salary for the first year, so that was mostly to hire a developer to help me.
Oh, okay. So it was just you and a developer to basically code the first version?
Yep. Oh. And also a little bit of design help as well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So how long did you guys spend before you actually released kind of Podia version 1.0?
Sure. So it took a little bit of time. I think it took about, if I remember correctly, about 9 months to a year to really kind of get the first version out. That doesn't mean we had something out previous to that, but it wasn't really kind of what it was today, what it is today. It was sort of more just running tests, that sort of thing. But so the first year it was just online courses. So I've always wanted to build a digital storefront from the start, but you don't want to build courses, downloads, memberships, and email marketing all from day one.
Right.
It's too much.
Sure.
So we started with just courses, and then about a year ago, we added downloads as sort of option 2. And then this past December in 2017, so about 6 months ago or 5 months ago, 4 months ago, we launched memberships and then email marketing as well. So there was some evolution to it. But we took it sort of one piece at a time.
Sure. No, I think that's really cool. So I think you guys do something really ballsy that I haven't seen many companies do, where you specifically have, some potential competitors, and you basically compare them, and you have links to all of them. They're basically landing pages. What was your rationale behind actually kind of listing some of your competitors and kind of why Podia is, offers more than them, really?
Mm-hmm. So it started from really just so many people asking me over live chat or email, like, how do you compare to X, or how do you compare with what to Y?
Okay.
And, I was saying the same thing every single time, like,
Sure.
this is why we're different. This is why we're better, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, I was like, oh, let me just build out these marketing pages that sort of talk about specifics. So if anyone wants to compare us to a competitor, they can just kind of read it on their own, and then I can sort of follow up with them if they have any more questions. So that's part of it. The other part is that we don't have any true competitor because we are the only digital storefront out there. So we have competitors in each one of these sort of product lines. So we have a competitor in online courses. We have a competitor in downloads. We have a competitor in memberships. And so having these sort of competitor pages allows us to tell that story where it's like, maybe you're thinking about X, but say you start with just online courses and then you want to add digital downloads in the future, you're kind of you're going to have to sign up for another platform, right? So it lets us tell them that, you might be starting here, but really you want to think about the future and kind of where you're going to be 5 years from now.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I also think too, at least when I'm doing research, and I think a lot of people too, they'll type in like a product and then kind of like alternative or alternates to. But I also think that like you guys, just even from like an SEO side of things, doing something like that has probably generated you a lot of traffic, maybe when people aren't even necessarily searching for Podia.
Yeah, and it's also great because if someone's searching for an alternative, that means that they're usually not happy with what they've found.
Interesting.
So it's a nice point to catch someone in kind of the cycle.
Sure. Well, and you touched on something too that I think I didn't really realize how much of a pain it was until kind of recently. And you've mentioned a couple of times about actually like you build one, like an online course or something, and then you want to do something else. Like having 4 or 5 services that you need to pay for monthly is actually like quite costly. And when your users come to your site and they get jumped around to a handful of different domains, it's really tricky to kind of keep them in the funnel, right? Like it can be potentially really almost like a nightmare user experience.
Yeah. So like without a doubt, 100%, we increase conversions if you're selling, say, courses and downloads or courses, downloads, and memberships or one of those combinations. If you move to us from previously having used like 2 or 3 platforms, 100% conversions are going to go up because it's going to make it easier for your customers. It's going to make it easier for you. So there's that. There's also as you mentioned, the saving money side of things too. If you're paying, say, like $39, $49, $59 per platform, and you're using, say, 3 or 4 platforms, you're looking at a $200, $300 bill, and that's on like the low end plan. So say you're on the top plans, then you're spending like $400 or $500. So we've literally saved people, and I have like the records to show. We've literally saved people like $400 or $500 a month.
I could see
from switching to us.
Well, and the other thing too is you guys don't take a cut of every time I sell something, right? Which a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize, like, if they have something that even sells quite a few versions, downloads, or courses or whatever, like if people are taking a certain percentage of that, that's a huge amount of your lost revenue, right? That I think people don't consider, like, and you don't need to sell that many before you start looking like, oh boy, like I'm paying them a lot of money.
Yeah, we actually moved over a guy recently that had a bunch of products on another platform.
Okay, sure.
and that guy was taking a 10% commission. That platform was taking a 10% commission on everything he sold.
Wow.
And he was selling just under $200,000 a year.
Wow.
And so he was literally spending $20,000 a year in commission fees to this company. And now he's with us and he pays $79 a month.
Yeah, so it's not even really a comparison, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing is, like, so transaction fees, in my opinion anywhere, are sort of like creator unfriendly. And one of our principles is really just to put the creator first and just do everything for the creator. So it just didn't feel right that we should get a cut for, your sweat selling and marketing one of your courses or products.
Sure. Well, and especially when you take credit cards online, like it has nothing to do with you guys. It's like those credit card processing companies take a transaction fee, and that's everywhere. It doesn't really matter what you use, right? Like, so people, I think, forget to factor that in. So if the guy's paying a platform, 10% plus his credit card transaction
plus 3% or whatever.
Right? Yeah, like you're losing a significant amount of money. So I think that's really great that you guys, kind of charge a flat fee, kind of no hidden fees. And I've actually worked with some people that are actually using your platform, which I think is really cool. But I'm kind of want to maybe transition into, you've done a ton of startups. You've done a ton of kind of successful startups. I think that, people have heard of you through one of your 3 startups, 4 startups. But what advice do you kind of give people that are maybe thinking of kind of raising money compared to bootstrapping? Because you've done both, but you've built extremely successful companies, from bootstrapping them yourself.
Yep. So I was actually just having this conversation yesterday with a founder, but so it's fresh on my mind.
Sure.
But so I think there's a few different things that go into it. The first thing is it was a lot easier to bootstrap a company, 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
There was just a lot less competition out there. So not necessarily even direct competition with you, but just there were far fewer sort of startups out there. So, you were getting far fewer emails, the reaching people, there was less noise. So today, in 2018, there's just a ton of startups out there and everyone's vying for your attention.
Right.
So it's much harder to get away as a bootstrap company, that has maybe little to no marketing budget, has, less money to hire great people, that sort of thing. So just right off the bat, you're sort of put at this disadvantage in 2018 from being a bootstrap company. You just have far fewer resources.
Interesting.
And that being said, I think also there's a lot more money out there too. There's a lot more investors. There's a lot more VCs. There's a lot more angels that are willing to put money in and not give you terrible terms. They're gonna write you a check and they're gonna be supportive, hopefully, and they're not going to try to take advantage of you. Whereas maybe 15 years ago, an investor would be like, okay, I want 50% of the company and all the voting rights, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I think the investor market is a little bit smarter and realize that they want to invest into entrepreneurs that are going to build businesses and that, you want fair terms for the entrepreneurs because the entrepreneurs can be more motivated.
Okay.
Obviously, I wouldn't even say there's really downsides to raising money. The biggest downside is you're obviously giving up part of your company.
Sure.
Which for years I bootstrapped, and the idea of raising money was like, I'm never going to do that. I don't want these investors owning any of my company. But I can definitely say we announced that we raised $3 million end of 2017, and
congrats,
it was
that's great.
The best decision. Thanks. Thank you. It was the best decision ever for Podia because now we have, 8 people, super talented. I don't have to worry so much about, shaving off $10, $20, $30,000 on someone's salary to find someone who's just not quite as good.
Gotcha.
Because we have the money to get the best people.
Sure.
Plus we have money for marketing, and we have, at the same time, because I'm a bootstrapper, I come from that world where it's I want to be super frugal and I don't want to spend too much, and I want to make sure that, we have money for the future and that sort of thing. But fortunately, we're in a really, really good position that we're doing super well. So we don't have to worry about those sorts of things.
Sure. Well, and you guys are obviously have recurring revenue as well. So that makes a lot of sense. And I get it. I think at least, and it sounds like you would kind of agree with what I'm about to say, is you almost need to do what's right for kind of the business at whatever state the business is in. If at the beginning it's just 2 friends trying out a project, you probably don't want to raise some money, and maybe that project takes off, and then you're like, oh man, we need to scale to, actually get some more help. Maybe you go raise some money, or maybe you say like, you know what, maybe we'll just see where this goes for a couple more months. And like, I think some people pick one or the other right out of the gate, and sometimes it can potentially hurt them down the road. Is that kind of a fair way to put it?
Yeah, totally. So I think a lot of people think that when you raise money, that means you raise money from day one, and that's just not the case. So with Podia, for example, the first year we didn't raise anything. So it was just me and developer and some of my money from my own bank account. And then we started to sort of get some growth going. We started to understand that we had something here. And it was at that point when we went looking for investors, but actually they kind of started looking for us.
Okay.
So it made it a lot easier. But like you don't want to raise money day one. You want to have an idea. You want to have a project. You want to have a prototype. You want to have some customers. Money should only really be used for putting kind of fuel to the fire, or if you are so sure that extra like 100, 200, 500, 1 million, 2 million, whatever is going to get you to the next level.
Sure. But correct me if I'm wrong, you guys kind of, your team's kind of spread out, and you don't really have like an office where you guys all meet every day. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Technically our headquarters in New York City, but I'm the only one here.
Okay, sure.
So, but yeah, we're spread out across, we have 2 in Canada, so 2 in Edmonton.
Sure.
We have a few in the United States and 1 in Ireland as well. So, distributed team across a lot of different time zones.
Sure.
But remote working is another thing I could talk a lot about as well.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with this, because I actually know a couple of the developers that actually work for you. I'm just because I live in Edmonton, and I know Kyle and Justin, who uses your platform all the time. I used to work with Justin. So the cool thing to me about kind of what you're doing is I think you're saving just a ton of money on not having like an office space payment a month. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. So thankfully I have a nice angel investor too that gives me free office space, so I don't even have to pay for that. But yeah, if all That's 8 great. Of us were in New York, like, let's think about that. I think that would probably be, I'm not exaggerating here, that would probably be $5,000 a month in office rent.
Sure.
So that's, what, $60K a year that we're saving from also being a remote team.
Well, even if you flew in the team a couple times a year just for a meetup, you're still saving a ton of money, right? Like,
and we actually just did that last week. We had our first team retreat in Portland, Maine.
Nice.
So everyone flew there. We spent Monday through Thursday hanging out, getting to know each other, and working. And it was actually awesome because it was the first time I met 3 out of the 8 people.
That's cool.
And a lot of them, it was the first time they met each other as well.
That's cool. So I do want to kind of get your thoughts on remote workers, because you've done it a few times for a number of years. What advice do you kind of give to people? Because I've had people on the show where they're like, I do it, but don't do it. It's awful. But you've seemed to be one of the few people I've met and come in contact with where they've actually made it work. And I would maybe argue is probably more successful than maybe actually having people in an office. It's like, maybe that's naive to say, but what's your experience with that?
So yeah, I think, first of all, I think remote working is sort of becoming a big popular thing right now. And I think it's working really well for a lot of companies. It's working. WordPress is fully remote now.
Yeah.
GitHub is fully remote. Basecamp is one of the ones that's really well known for being mostly remote as well.
Sure.
But the thing that I found, honestly, is really just the most important thing is just communication, but not over communicating.
Okay.
So, like you on Slack, so we use a combination of Slack and Trello, basically.
Right.
And you want to communicate throughout the day, sort of, things you're working on, things you're not working on, that sort of thing. But you don't want to be a distraction in the sense that you don't want to, knock on everyone's door every hour. So it's really nice to sort of have a group of people that sort of, they can work autonomously. Like, that's very important as a remote team. So say someone's working on like a project, they can kind of go and do it on their own, and then they can check in if they have like questions, that sort of thing. It's also important not to, I think, schedule too many meetings for remote teams. So I think people think that, oh, you're remote, so you don't see each other, so we have to talk every single day on video chat. But like that's not the case either. So we only have one scheduled meeting per week, which is Monday at noon, where we all jump on a video chat and we sort of go over everything for the week. And then sort of everyone just kind of goes off and does their own thing. And then we check in throughout the week. But it's not this thing where you have to have daily stand-ups. And I think that sort of gets into the negative side of remote working, where people are like, oh, I got to check in a bunch because we're not in the same office.
Sure. Well, the thing that always, and tell me what your thoughts on what I'm about to say is, like, the thing that I always found interesting about kind of being on the design side, and I would put developers kind of in the same boat, is I'm literally either like building something that you can look at, or as from the developer, you're like, I'm checking in code. You can see if I'm working or not, because like my deliverables are so kind of tangible. You can see if I wrote like 3 lines of code today, or I didn't write any, or I wrote like 30,000, right? Like maybe you're not checking in. Well, you should check in kind of daily, but I mean, as a generalization, like it's not like it's this abstract kind of thing. You can see if people are pulling their weight pretty quickly, at least from the design developer kind of side of things. So I think to your point, like you can leave people alone because you can kind of see if they're working or not working within like a week or two anyway. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, I definitely don't monitor people's daily work activity, whether you committed 3 lines of code or 100. I think what's really more important is that, you have this sort of sprint that you're working on, or you have these Trello tickets that you're going through, and, you're updating the Trello ticket, and you're, checking off to-dos, and you're sort of talking it through. And then on our weekly Monday meetings, you sort of just give a status report of like the overall progress and where things are at. And I think that's so much more valuable than, hey, Chris, or hey, Kyle, like, how much have you gotten done today? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it also takes the pressure off people too. So we all know, like, every single day we come to work, we're not going to be at our like 100%. It's just not possible.
Sure.
So there's certain days where, like, Tuesday, maybe I'm not feeling super productive. And so, because it's a remote work environment, I don't have to stay at the office. I can go run to the gym, or I can go walk around the park, that sort of thing. And then I can come back, feel revitalized, and get back to work. So I think the remote is super friendly for that sort of thing. Yeah. Whereas like in an office, you feel like, oh, I got to get there at 9 and I got to clock out at 5, even if like between 2 and 4, I'm not feeling well.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I always find it interesting because I am not a morning person, and there's days that sometimes like noon rolls around and I wake up, or I'm tired the whole day and like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening rolls around, I'm like wide awake, and it would make way more sense for me to start working at that point than, kind of struggling through the day, right? Or even, like you said, go for a walk or go to the gym, and sometimes that doesn't make sense. And
there's no social pressure too.
Yeah.
When you work in an office, you're like, okay, I'm not going to leave my desk for the next hour because people are going to look at me. Funny, whereas you're in Slack and you can be like, hey guys, a BRB gonna go for a walk, and it's less of this like social pressure.
Sure.
So there's that side of things, and I think also the other side of things is that when you hire remotely, you really get a much broader range of people and talent. Sure. Whereas like if you're just hiring for, say, New York City, there's just a much smaller pool. Like it's New York City versus the world.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
So you get to work with people who are like, for me, for example, I get to work for people in Ireland, and I get to work with people in Western Canada. So you get more perspective on the product, and you get different types of people, which really helps when you're trying to build a product for people.
Sure. Well, no, I think one of the best things I ever did in my career was actually like take a class where you had people from kind of all over the world. And there was 2 things that kind of always stuck with me. It was one of those things that like, you take even something as simple as like the colors like red, white, and blue. Well, in North America, everybody's like, well, that's the American flag. Like, that's America. But if you're in parts of Europe, they would say, well, that's France. And I know that's like a really, really simple version of what I'm trying to get at. But just even having the perspectives where like, hey, this button means this, or this context means this in like this part of the world. Or like, I think another example that's kind of sad is you have like people in a boat, maybe like down a canal somewhere in Europe or wherever. And some people will say like, oh, those people are on vacation. And then some people will be like, no, those people are like refugees. And you're like, wow, like that's totally opposite, right? So I think just having people and the diversity across different parts of the world to give you like, hey guys, this means this or that, or like just the perspectives like you touched on, I think is undervalued if you just kind of hire the same types of people in kind of one geographic location.
Yeah, it's much better from like a cultural perspective. And it's also really fun working with people that are different than you and are from different parts of the world. You just learn a lot more. I know more about Ireland now than I ever would have without working with Jamie, for example.
Sure. Well, and I think the other thing too is even if you're not like at work at your computer working, with the tools nowadays, if somebody has a quick question, you just like look at your phone and say like, hey man, that's over here. And then like the conversation's over. Like even if you're, it's like 8:00 at night and you're just getting in or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. Like we're so connected nowadays that the communication's so easy. But I am kind of curious to know, is there any other tools that you guys use kind of on a daily or weekly basis that you found really useful for kind of working remote?
So I think there's a few that we use and they're all really helpful.
Okay.
So Zoom is what we use for video chats on Monday. Right. On our Mondays, we used Google Hangouts for the longest time, and it was just so buggy, and the audio and the video was slow. And actually moving to Zoom was almost life-changing for the company because it was like, oh wow, I can see you in HD, and like, oh wow, you're coming in clear. So, I'm a big advocate of Zoom. It's not even that expensive. I think we pay $16-17 a month or something like that. Right. So that's what we use for our video chats. For kind of day-to-day operations, we use Slack. We have our separate channels, one for product, one for development, one for marketing, et cetera. And we have a bunch of different integrations that we use, some on the like fun cultural side, and then some on the, GitHub notifications, that sort of thing. We also use Trello for all the product management. We started with Basecamp about 3 years ago. But Trello is there's something about Trello that I really like, this idea of like, you move things from the left all the way to the right. You just you feel good.
Yeah, no, totally. I know what you mean. Feel like you're accomplishing something, right?
Right. And we've got like these really clearly defined buckets of things, and you can really see at a glance what everyone's working on and like what the roadmap is, et cetera. So we love Trello for that. For all kind of collaborative text stuff, we use Dropbox Paper. So we moved to Dropbox Paper about a year ago, and it beats Google Drive, Google Docs out of the water.
Interesting.
It is the best tool ever for like product specs, team collaboration, commenting, etc. Like I've convinced a bunch of different startups to move to Dropbox Paper. Wow. This is like an ad for them right now.
No, but it's good. I haven't even tried it. To be honest, I canceled my Dropbox account and I never even tried it. But no, I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's a lot of really cool things that it does with images and video, and just the way that it's like laid out. There's much more white space, so it feels much more like a whiteboard. And the commenting is really, really good too. So we use that for all kind of collaboration stuff in terms of like product specs, roadmap, that kind of thing. And then we still use Google spreadsheets for any kind of numbers data thing because Dropbox Paper doesn't have really that functionality yet. So we use that for looking at our like performance metrics, et cetera. And then we also use GitHub for all code reviews. We don't really do reviews, but like pull requests, commenting, all that sort of thing. And then we use InVision we use Illustrator and Sketch for design, and we use InVision for kind of sharing and talking about mockups and stuff like that.
Sure. No, that's very cool. I think that's really great. But sadly, Spencer, we're out of time. So let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and Podia. Sure.
So very easy, Podia.com. So Podia.com. And if anyone's wondering, Podia is the plural form of podium. So the idea is that we give everyone a podium to be able to sell content.
Very cool.
So my name is Spencer Fry, as you guys probably guessed. But you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Spencer Fry, Fry. And that's the only real social network I use. So feel free to hit me up.
Perfect. All right. Well, Spencer, I really appreciate you taking the time in your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks, man. Okay, bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening. To join the free community, buy some merch, sponsor the show, or sign up for the newsletter, please visit the website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.